All right, looks like we've got everybody we're gonna get here tonight for work session, so we'll go ahead and just get started. On the agenda, we have the chair and co-chair elections. Happens every year at the first of the year. And with that, I will let you all take it away.
Happy New Year, huh?
Happy New Year.
Thank you, Crystal. This is always my favorite discussion because it's always, I don't know, there's like not awkward way to do this.
Maybe one day we'll get some structure to it, but
Yeah, but not in 2024. We're gonna muddle along. Let's do. We're gonna muddle along. These guys aren't even paying attention over here.
We are. You're just looking at Chester Cathedral.
Okay.
Miss Chair.
Commissioner Danley, good evening and Happy New Year to you.
Likewise, good sir. So in light of discussion that we had, idea would be to continue the existing structure with Commissioner Schaefer as chair, myself as vice chair. The primary reason is for the word of the year, continuity. Given the turnover in of the commission itself, one new member, two oncoming members, two members leaving soon. Commissioner Blanchard and Commissioner Squires.
Yeah. Within the next, I believe, couple of months,
their terms end at the end of February.
end of February. Yeah. So they're down to two or three meetings at this point now. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the additional thing of this lovely new document and just feeling like there's a lot of moving parts here, and therefore having a steady hand that's been doing a great job the last couple of years as the trade-off, the potential handoff happen next year would make sense. In addition to that, we talked about him forcefully staying home a day or two. And the possibility of running a few meetings, particularly towards the latter part of next year, just hitting the ground running, setting ourselves up for, a good 2025 and getting more experience with some of the members that are going to be newer and so forth. So that was a general conversation. Certainly, if there's other food for thoughts that other commissioners have, now's the time to have it.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, if there's any, we can certainly approach this as a motion and then discuss, or if there's any other comments or discussion. I think essentially Chris's proposal is to proceed as currently formatted.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie, good evening.
I support the proposal and am ready to make a motion
Very good.
whenever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd support the proposal
Okay.
and I'd second that motion if Commissioner Gillespie would like to make it.
Can we ask Cardinal Mooney?
Yeah, absolutely.
John, I looked over there and I saw you and I said, damn, we got a cardinal from the Vatican calling in.
I just had to find a warm sweater is all.
You found it.
John,
No,
are
I
you
love
okay
the-
with the plan?
I love the plan, yes.
Okay. Mr.
Very
Chairman,
good.
I'm,
I think, Raj, real quick, we got Esther online as well.
Oh.
We're going to check in with Esther before we move on.
Where's
Esther, how are
Esther?
you?
Oh, not too bad. I'm just recovering from COVID. So you will not see me on the camera because I am wiping my nose. I support a motion that would keep things as is in terms of leadership.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Hope you're feeling better. Hang in there. Okay, Milt?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we elect Bob Schaefer chair and Chris Danley co-chair for
Second.
2024.
Second.
Okay, very good. We've got a motion for myself as chair, Chris as co-chair. Got a second. So we'll go ahead and call the roll on that, unless there's any more discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer, yeah, please. Sorry, kind of
Thank you.
jumped on.
Yeah, thank you both for continuing to be chair and co-chair next year. I think you've done a great job last year and looking forward to it this year too.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. I guess, Crystal, we've got to do a little roll here. We're just going to, how official do we have to be here?
I think this is good. I'm looking,
James?
we can vote, we can go ahead and vote on it. Might as well.
Let's do it. Let's call the roll if you wouldn't mind, Christina.
Make it official.
Yeah.
Annals of
Schaefer?
City Hall.
Aye.
Let's see, Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
All right.
Mooney,
I love it.
Seha,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
All right. Well, thank you, gang. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Bob and Chris, on another success, what I'm sure will be a successful year, and interesting, so.
Indeed, indeed.
Well, excellent. Well, we can go ahead and just squinch right into agenda review. So tonight we were gonna have quite a doozy of an evening, but, looks like our list has shortened quite a bit while I was gone, so that was good news to come back to, I'll say. So starting off, we do have minutes and works from the December 4th and December 11th hearing. That's 4 in total, so we'll need to go ahead and get those approved. We also are starting off with 2 time extensions. One is PUD 2135 for Ryan Murr. That's at 1720 South Curtis Road. It's for a conditional use permit for a PUD comprised of 4 single-family homes on just over a half an acre in an R1C zone. We're recommending approval. Item B is a time extension for PUD 2162 from Givens Pursley. It is at 8373 Victory Road. It's a request for to extend a PUD comprised of 301 multifamily units on approximately 15 acres in an R3D DA zone. And again, we are recommending approval on that as well.
Can we do those on one motion? Because they're both.
Yep.
They're just open time extensions, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. And then moving into our public hearing items, item 1 was SOS 2326 for David Benoit at 3006 West Gerard Street. It's a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct sidewalk as part of a minor land division on 0.63 acres in an R1C zone. That has been requested to defer to a future date, undetermined. So I guess, yeah.
So we'll do a motion to defer,
To
just a later
later date.
TBD.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yep.
All right. Check in with the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the public, of course.
And the public, of course. We are not expecting anyone, but definitely check in.
Okay.
Item 2 is SUB 2343 for Irving Commons subdivision. It's at 10881 West Florence Drive. It's a prelim plat for residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots on 2.94 acres and an R2 DEA, which is medium density residential with development agreement zone. We are recommending approval, and we can try for consent on that one. Item 3 is CUP 2352 from Yesco. It was deferred from December 4th. It was a CUP for an EMD sign at 3668 North Harbor Lane, but it has been withdrawn, so we do not have to take any action on that one.
Okay.
Item 4 is PUD 2324 and CVA 2321 for Boise River Builders at 1904 West State Street. This is a conditional use permit for a residential PUD comprised of 3 single-family units on 0.17 acres and a C2D general commercial with design review zone. Parking reduction and a variance to encroach into the perimeter setbacks is also included. Attached with that is SUB 2326, titled 19th Street subdivision for those 3 buildable lots. We are recommending denial, so we will need to hear that one. Item 5 is CVA 2324 for Ethos Design and Remodel LLC. It's at 3124 North Crane Creek Road. It's a variance to encroach the side setback on 0.34 acres in an R1B single-family residential zone. We are recommending denial, so we will need to hear that. And this will be the debut for our newest planner, Ivan. So go easy on him or go hard, whichever. He's ready.
Got it.
Item
And it's
6.
Kowalczyk, right?
Kowalczyk.
Kowalczyk.
Yes. Item 6 is PUD 234 for Medici Architects. That's at 2810 West Bannock Street. It was a CUP for a PUD comprised of 4 multifamily units on 0.14 acres in an R3D zone with a parking reduction. They have also withdrawn, and we have no further action to be taken on that. Item 7. SUB 2314 for 25th and Bannock Townhome Subdivision at 2502 West Bannock Street. was a prelim and final plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 5 townhome lots on 0.28 acres in R3D zone, has also withdrawn and requires no action. It's an interesting way to start the year. Item 8, PUD 2327 for Storehog Engineering at 3515 West State Street. It's a conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 39 multifamily units on 0.99 acres in a C2D general commercial with design review zone. We are recommending approval. We did have somebody sign up, but it's unclear whether they were in support or against, so we may have to hear that one. It
Okay.
might be pulled from consent, so we'll just see if what they say when they come in.
Okay, sound good.
Item 9 is CR 2322 for JD Planning and Consulting. It's also PUD 2328. It's at 12548 West Overland Road. It's a modification to an existing development agreement to allow residential and expanded commercial uses on 5.4 acres and a C2D DA general commercial with design review and development agreement zone. With that is a PUD comprised of 156 multifamily units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on that same site. We are recommending approval and can try for consent on that final item. So all together now, we have minutes and then items A and B, item 2, and 8 and 9 that we can try for consent.
A, B,
Does that sound right?
minutes A,
Yep.
B, 2, 2, 8, 9.
Yep. And then item, the deferral, yep, item 1 will be deferred.
Yeah.
And probably right at the forefront, you should go ahead and announce
Just with
that 3
3, 6, and 7 are withdrawn.
are withdrawn and have no action on
Yep.
them. And then there we go.
Okay,
We may only
have
have
2.
2. Yeah.
yeah. Happy
depending.
New Year.
Happy New Year. And
Yeah.
with that, agenda review is done.
I think Mel's gonna find this, I'm only Karen out in the hallway and
What?
put her in headlock.
No, 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 no. Thank you, Crystal.
Mel has football.
Mr. Chair,
John, did you have a question?
I do have a question.
Oh,
It might, maybe we're already cut off. I'll
Try
wait
raise-
for the. Yeah, that's all right. I'll just wait till the minutes review. Thanks, Esther.
All right, everybody, good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up in the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given either written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize the consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item is placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are then approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not placed on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, and neighborhood association presentations and then public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Here.
Squires, Blanchard, Moore,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here.
Benfrock, Danley,
Here.
Mooney,
Here.
Seha,
Here.
6 present, 3 absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have some housekeeping to take care of here first thing this evening. Up first, we had a few items withdrawn, a few applications withdrawn. So item number 3 is CUP 23-52 at 366 North Harbor Lane. That item has been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing anything on that item tonight. Likewise, item number 6 is PUD 23-4. Project address is 2810 West Bannock Street. That item has also been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing that. And also item number 7 is SUB 23-14 at 2502 West Bannock Street. That item has also been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing that item as well. And then we do have a few items. We'll do the deferral next. We have one item that would like to be deferred. This is item number 1, SOS 23-26, David Benoit at 3006 West Girard Street. Is the applicant present tonight? Not present? Okay, we'll go ahead and assume that they're good with the deferral since it was their request. Is there anybody here this evening hoping to testify on this item? And again, this is item SOS 23-26. Okay, you good, Bill? Okay. Okay, looks like no one's here to testify on that item, so we'll go ahead and take a motion to defer item 1. And this is just an open deferral to a later date to be determined.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 1, SOS 23-26, be deferred to a future P and Z date.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a motion to defer item number 1 by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Moore. Clerk, please call the roll.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you all. And then we do have some items eligible for the consent agenda. So we'll take those up. I take up those items now. Without objection, I'll place our meeting minutes from December 4th and our work session minutes from December 4th, as well as our meeting minutes from December 11th and our work session minutes from December 11th on the consent agenda. Item A is PUD 21-35 at 1720 South Curtis Road. This is a time extension, so without objection, I'd place item A on the consent agenda. And then also item B is PUD 21-62, Givens Pursley at 8373 Victory Road. This is also a 2-year time extension, and without objection, I'll place that item on the consent agenda. And then moving along on our agenda, item number 2, looks like it's eligible for the consent agenda. This is SUB 23-43 Irving Commons Subdivision at 10881 West Florence Drive. This is a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots on 2.94 acres in an R2 DA zone. And is the applicant present? Stephanie? Hi, Stephanie. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Very good. Okay. Applicant's present and in agreement with the staff report. And is there anyone hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item 2 on the consent agenda. Then moving on. Okay, item 8 looks like it's eligible for consent as well. This is PUD 23-27 Store Hog Engineering at 3515 West State Street. This is a conditional use permit for a residential planned development comprised of 39 multifamily units on 0.99 acres in a C2D zone. And is the applicant present? Looks like the applicant is online.
Yes. Applicant
Hi
is
there,
present. Can
Mr.
you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Hello there, Mr.
Okay.
Trimble. Are you in
Hello.
agreement with the staff report?
We are.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We did have a few folks sign up on this item. Is there anybody in attendance hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Again, this is item number 8. Okay, you folks would like to testify in opposition to that project? Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and hear item number 8 then. Okay. And then item number 9 is CAR 23-22 JD Planning and Consulting at 12548 West Overland Road. This is a modification to an existing development agreement to allow residential and expanded commercial uses on 5.4 acres in a C2D DA zone. And then there's also a PUD 23-28 at the same address, which is a conditional use permit for a planned mixed-use development comprised of 156 multifamily units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on 5.4 acres in the C2D DA zone. And is the applicant present? That looks like they're online. Mr. Thomas, good evening.
Yes, thank you.
And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Very good. Thank you very much. And then is there anybody hoping to testify in opposition to this item? I did have one person sign up, Mr. Finnegan. Yeah. Are you here in opposition of that project? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and hear item 9 then as well. Okay, I guess that does it for consent. So I will entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the following items. The meeting minutes and work session meeting minutes are from December 4th and December 11th. Item A, PUD 21-35, a time extension located at 1720 South Curtis Road. Item B, PUD 21-62, another time extension located at 8373 Victory Road. And I think item number 2, SUB 23-43, a preliminary plat located at 10881 West Florence Drive. Sure, with their respective terms and conditions in their staff reports.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? Very good. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
Yep.
Mooney,
Yes,
Seha,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. With that, we still have a number of items on our agenda. We'll start at the top. Up first is item number 4. This is PUD 2324 and CVA 23-21, Boise River Builders at 1904 West State Street. A conditional use permit for a residential planned development comprised of 3 single-family units on 0.17 acres in a C2 DA zone. Parking reduction and variance to encroach into the perimeter setbacks is also included. And then there's also an SUB 23-26 at the same address, a preliminary plat for the said residential subdivision comprised of 3 buildable lots on the 0.17 acres. And we're going to hear from Matt Dennis with staff to kick us off tonight. Hey, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. The item before you is a planned unit development and preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 3 buildable lots, as well as a conditional use permit for a parking reduction and a variance to encroach into the front perimeter setback located at 1904 West State Street in a C2D, general commercial with design review zone. The applicant proposes to subdivide the subject property, which currently contains 3 single-family detached homes on 1 parcel, in order to sell each single-family lot individually. The homes were constructed prior to the adoption of the zoning code and have received legal nonconforming status for their use. The proposal meets the required density of the C2 zone, which allows for 1 dwelling unit per 1,000 square feet. As proposed, the lot sizes range from approximately 1,800 to 2,900 square feet. The proposal is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, which contains predominantly single-family detached houses to the north and west and a mix of commercial and residential uses to the east and south across 19th and State Streets. As defined within the State Street Corridor Transit-Oriented Development Plan, also known as the TOD plan, the multi-use pathway plan spans along the northern and southern sides of State Street, west of 16th Street to Eagle Road. The plan calls for a 12-foot wide multi-use pathway that is separated from the curb by an 8-foot wide landscape buffer. This directly affects the subject property and its proposed use because the southernmost house is situated approximately 21 feet from the back of the curb. Agency comments received from the City of Boise Pathways Program stated that approximately 60 feet of clear space is needed from the center line of the right-of-way in order to construct the complete street section, including the multi-use pathway, and that applications that are unable to support this planned pathway should not be supported. This equates to approximately 30 feet from the back of the existing curb, which would encroach into the southernmost house by at least 9 feet. Therefore, the multi-use pathway cannot be accommodated on site by the current configuration on the lot without requiring demolition. Single-family residential subdivisions that are adjacent to arterial or collector roadways are required to provide 30-foot wide and 20-foot wide landscape buffers between the right-of-way and the proposed lots respectively. As shown on your screen, the required landscape buffers would encroach into the footprint of all 3 homes. In lieu of this subdivision requirement, the Development Code allows for alternative compliance, in which a proposal would need to provide an equal or superior means to meet the intent of this requirement, where explicit compliance is not feasible. However, as no modification to the existing landscaping on site was proposed, it cannot be justified that this requirement has been fulfilled. Currently, the subject property does not contain any compliant off-street parking. Due to the lot size and the location of the structures, providing the 6 required off-street parking spaces on site was not feasible. Therefore, the applicant requested a parking reduction and submitted a parking study which detailed the availability of on-street parking at varying times and days of the week. The submitted parking study shows the availability of on-street parking fluctuates day to day. However, the parking study included spaces directly across 19th Street from the subject property, which currently contains signage that limits on-street parking to 1 hour during business hours with no residential permit available. Additionally, agency comments received from the City of Boise Fire Department indicated that no parking signs would be required to be installed on-site adjacent to 19th Street, which would remove about 5 on-street parking spaces that are currently being used. This leaves only 9 spaces on 19th Street that could be considered as viable long-term parking spaces. Therefore, the planning team had determined that the submitted parking study does not provide adequate justification, that the required parking reduction would not cause adverse impacts to neighboring properties, transportation facilities, and public services, and for that reason is not supported. A variance is also included in the proposal as 2 of the legal non-conforming structures encroach into the 10-foot front perimeter setback as required by the C2 zone. Although there is an exceptional circumstance associated with the property in that this encroachment currently exists and has received legal nonconforming status, this variance is not supported for similar reasons as were previously stated. To summarize, the planning team recommends denial of the proposal because it does not include modifications to the site that would accommodate public or private amenities to services without causing an undue burden to the transportation network and neighboring properties. As outlined within the project report, although the proposal is compatible with the surrounding single-family residential neighborhood, the site is not large enough to accommodate the proposed use because it cannot provide the required landscape buffers, the planned multi-use pathway, or adequate parking, and therefore is considered to adversely affect neighboring property and public services, which would be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, and conflicts with multiple goals, principles, and policies within the comprehensive plan. In conclusion, the planning team recommends denial of the proposal. I will stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
My name is Todd Blackwell, Boise River Builders. My home address is 5166 North Corollaro Lane, Boise, Idaho, 83702. To give a little bit of a history on this property in the project, everything what has been said has been true. The properties were actually built in 1900 through 1910. Through research, even through the Polk directory, they've been independent addresses since as far back as 1960. I came into the meeting in April of 2023 in regards to this to bring into single-family homes within the corridor of the main downtown area. It's currently C2D. It's a commercial property. They're all on one parcel, so they cannot be sold independently. So therefore, they cannot be sold to independent persons, single-family homes. At that time, during our first pre-con meeting, I was informed that it is not a standard subdivision, but that similar situations had been approved through the city. So at that point, we started the process of surveying, creating separate lots, submitting it to the city. Then in August, we got a response back that I couldn't do a record of survey, which is how we submitted it, that we needed to do a full plat. So we went into going through a full plat and going through all of the process, being the one stipulation was that the lot lines be adjusted for fire-related purposes on the structures. So we go through this entire process. We actually even get a date of our hearing, and then I'm informed that they can't approve it because of the setbacks. And I'm like, well, these setbacks have never changed. There was going to be no improvements to the structures. The parking situation has been the parking situation for 70 years at a minimum. There is 2 parking spaces along the alleyway. ACHD's response was an improvement of the alleyway from the property to 19th Street and to redo any damaged concrete that's there. The purpose of it is to provide housing for people at an affordable price. And we went through the process and then we were denied at the end. And it just was a little bit confusing in regards to why we were encouraged to submit it when nothing was ever going to change. We aren't going to move the homes. In regards to the corridor along State Street, there would be 10 homes that would have to be removed, making all of those lots useless for this pathway that has been discussed, which is something that I just don't feel that's ever going to take place. That would mean all 10 homes would have to be raised, and they're single-family homes. There's businesses along there. So I'm just not sure, but none of this was discussed prior to us doing thousands of dollars worth of engineering work, resubmitting based on questions that they had on the plat and redoing it. And then at the end saying that we can't do it because it never was going to fit those criterias. And so it's parking on 19th Street. There's LeBois Veterinary. They have their own parking across the way. From Washington all the way to State Street, the property hasn't changed. The home on Washington and is not going to change. The business, that's a computer business and a dog wash, that's not changing. It's a business. And so the parking isn't changing. We're not asking for the parking to change, nor could we ever adhere to any rules to do that. And so it's just a confusion that we have a denial when we went through the steps that we were encouraged to do.
Okay.
All right.
All right. You good? All right. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell.
All right.
Okay. Let's check in, see if we have anybody from the North End Neighborhood Association present. Doesn't look like Mr. Hagan's with us tonight, so we'll go ahead and open up for any questions by the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
I
Gillespie, please.
have a question for the applicant, Mr. Blackwell. So, Mr. Blackwell, do you have any factual disagreements with the staff report or the findings in the staff report?
I can't have any factual disagreements because the property doesn't have the ability to have a 30-foot setback, doesn't have an ability to have a 20-foot setback. The parking issues, I've never even seen the staff report, so I didn't know the fire department had responded with a no parking. I've never even received that staff report.
Okay.
So I can't argue on something on law when when the intention the entire time was to come in. Once again, it's unusual, but it has been approved in the past, and then to get a denial.
So the basis for your approval request is essentially a process one. You're making a process argument. Is that
Basis for
right?
my approval request is I booked flights to fly in here from out of state to come to the meeting, was told 2 weeks ago that this thing was being denied. We've been doing this for 9 months and not sure where this disconnect came between, yes, it's unusual, but it can be approved, to there's no way we're going to approve it. Then why did we run through this whole, spending thousands of dollars of my client's money? It's not cheap to do surveys and then do plat maps and then do in my time. And so I'm more of a confused on why we're even here if it's not going to be approved, because we didn't do anything to set it up to not be approved based on what we were informed during our pre-con.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner Down.
I guess just a big picture question to Matt here is that, ironically enough, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost as if the unit that is nearest State Street, if that unit was bulldozed, and that particular, it's not an existing lot, but the applicant is trying to make it its own unique lot, was made into a parking lot, it would accommodate the pathway and be able to do the landscape mitigation in that space and accommodate this lot split to accommodate housing, right? Would it not? I mean, that's what the gist of this is that we don't have enough space in order to get a pathway that's in the plans. We don't have enough space for on-site parking, and we don't have enough space to mitigate the front buffer and landscaping component. And there's not mitigation in this application to achieve those primarily those three things. But the irony being is, if that house was bulldozed and a parking lot was put in, all three of those could be achieved, which the intent of the applicant is to add housing to the city. But you see where I'm going. Is that, I mean, am I off on that, or is that accurate?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Danley, I would say that that's accurate, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer, please.
Just a clarification. So for the lot lines that don't conform, the ones where the eaves encroach, is it just the south lot line of parcel B that you're referring to? It's just that one? If that one was shifted to kind of maybe halfway between parcel A and parcel B, that one would, like the eave encroaching, that wouldn't be an issue anymore?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, as proposed, it looks like there's two, the northern and southern setback of lot 2, so that middle lot. The northern setback is 0 feet and the southern setback is 3 inches.
Okay, so it's both of them.
my apologies, those were reversed. The southern setback is 3 inches and the northern setback is 0 feet, 0 inches.
Mr. Chairman, it's on
Yeah.
the, Commissioner Morris, it's on the,
It's on the screen there.
yeah, it's the two red arrows from
Right.
parcel B.
There's one of the survey documents just has what looks like eave overhangs, but I don't think it actually is eave overhangs. One of the survey documents looks like it's got eave overhangs drawn on it, but I don't, it's probably something else. Might be setbacks or something.
Matt, was it ever explored with the applicant to just do, is there any way to get this to 2 parcels that work? Did you have that discussion with the applicant at all? I mean, with the setbacks aside,
put in
right,
30
for the landscape buffers aside.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, a reduction in density wasn't discussed. The only alternative solution that myself or the planning team was able to come up with was a condo plat, which would be able to retain those structures as they exist, and go through the condo plat procedure through city council,
Okay.
but not any modification to what currently exists.
John's got a question.
Oh, thanks. John, you get your hand up, sorry. I'm not practiced. We've had everybody in person so many times. So I'm out of practice with you being online.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I've got another question for staff. And first, to kudos to the staff. I liked how the project report read when basically the argument and the analysis started off with all the good things about this, which is preserving housing stock and things like that. And I really appreciate when a report's written that way and it brings out the comp plan benefits before it dives into the multiple reasons why the comp plan might not be benefited. But my other process question is for Matt and maybe more senior in the planning department, which is ACHD in their staff report stated there are no planned right-of-way improvements for State Street. And so I know this is an ongoing punching bag on ACHD, but they're a signatory to the State Street Transit-Oriented Development Plan, and yet their planner doesn't seem to know about it. And either that's a problem with ACHD planning that our senior city officials need to communicate to ACHD senior officials, but that's a problem when we get staff reports that aren't bringing up a really obvious oversight on ACHD's part. Matt, am I off base there?
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney. I would agree with that. The reason, at least my understanding, the reason why the ACHD agency comments did not condition the State Street multi-use path is due to the proposal retaining the existing structures. As no new development or redevelopment was occurring, there was no added condition for that reason.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess it's just a suggestion for senior staff at the city to maybe ask the ACHD planners to be ACHD current planners to be talking to their long-range planners, because it doesn't seem like the city ought to be responsible for every one of these across the system.
Okay. Thanks, John. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody. We'll go ahead and open up this item for any public testimony. Is there anybody here who would like to testify on this item? Yeah, come on up, please. Podium's free. Get 3 minutes to testify. If you can start with your name and address, please.
Dave Callis. It's 6064 Wyatt Lane in Boise, Idaho. I'm actually the owner of this property, so I guess I'm concerned. Todd's been doing it for me because I had some medical conditions prior this year, and so I'm healed up, and so I thought I'd come to the meeting. But I guess my question is, if we do nothing, those properties have been there for over 70 years. The parking's not changed, the conditions haven't changed. We're dealing with the historic district, so they're talking about removing a house when they're totally against removing houses that are historic, culture down there. So all we were trying to do was create substandard lots that are already there. They all have individual sewers, all separate utilities. They've been like that from day one. So all we did was try to get a survey that would give everybody an adequate housing, a lot, which would accommodate for affordable housing for people that want to live in the North End. So we thought it'd be a pretty straightforward process and been led to believe that. And so this is kind of news to me and Todd as far as this opposition, because had we known there were setbacks, it was just a flat no. We got 3 nice 2-bedroom dwellings that have been there forever. And it'd be different if they were all on one utility line or something like that, but they all have separate sewers and utilities. So at some time, the city was in agreement with this and set them up all individually. I mean, because if you build a condominium complex like he's referring to, or anything like that, you have one joint sewer system. So I think with the sections, and then we look at all the auxiliary units that are being built throughout the North End, those are adding additional parking problems and conditions, whereas this one's already been in existence. So there's no additional parking requirements that we're requesting. So I just like to say, I would like to have it reconsidered to be supported for affordable housing for people versus to be denied based on a setback. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Callis. Anybody else like to testify on this item? Okay, we got a few folks online. Check in there. If you're online and want to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and close the public testimony. Applicant typically gets 5 minutes for rebuttal of anything that's said during testimony. You guys can certainly yield that time if you'd like. Okay, very good. Okay, so applicant's yielded his rebuttal time. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, we have a PUD and a CVA and an SUB. We can take them all up individually or as one.
I'll take it as one.
Okay, all right. Go ahead,
Mr.
Mel.
Chairman,
Please.
move that we deny PUD 23-24, CVA 23 and CVA 23-21 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, Mel. Yeah.
So this is a really always an interesting part of city law, and we only really get into this about once a decade. The last time we got into a big non-conforming use was the shooting range that the police used. And like our first or second hearing, Chris, it was one of our long time ago. So the basic idea of a non-conforming use is these were built way before there was any zoning code at all. So when the zoning code goes in whatever it was, 1972, the city sort of by law has to say, if you've already built something, the zoning code can't make you tear it down because that's like a really serious taking. So they sort of by definition, a lot of things in the North End were built, the spacing was all, the parcels were defined. Then the new zoning code comes in. A lot of them are legally non-conforming uses that has a special place in our plan. It's plan section 11-011. It's a good thing for you guys to read. The basic idea of the code as it's written now is not to allow for the expansion or the growth of non-conforming uses. And so what the code says is you can't make major changes in a non-conforming use unless you bring that use into conformance with the code as it exists today. You can do minor repairs. There's a whole section on what constitutes what you can do and still keep your legally non-conforming use status. That's very well defined in code, right? What the city, and I think the city's right, according to the code, is doing a subdivision in a PUD constitutes a major change to a non-conforming use, and therefore the PUD and the CVA are subject to the rules as they are set today. The applicant is correct that the effect of this is to discourage change in a non-conforming use. That is exactly right. That is exactly the intent of the code. That says non-conforming uses can continue as long as you don't implement a big change. There's even a section that says, like, if all those houses burn down, whatever you put back there has to conform to the use or the code today. That's just the way the city for 50, 60 years has handled non-conforming uses. They do create an obvious, what's the right word? Conundrum in that you're right. If we deny these and you guys don't do anything, they stay exactly where they are. And that is exactly what the code contemplates, frankly. As crazy as, you and I might think it is over a beer, that's what the code says. So I don't think this case is actually very close the way the current code is written. So that's why, I made the motion to deny these two things.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry
Okay.
for the long-winded.
It's a
No,
good
it's
explanation.
okay.
That's what I do.
That's what we're here
Yeah.
for. Chris.
Mr. Chairman, so first of all, to the applicants, I just want to convey apology. I don't know what happened. I can't speak to any of the process. I understand your frustration. It's palpable. And I wish I knew more to be able to give you a better explanation. That said, in addition to what Commissioner Gillespie said, the only things that I want to add are two major things. One, I suspect that with this, our new code that will be going into effect and is in effect now, because this is a transit corridor and because your parcel goes right up against the transit corridor, it wouldn't surprise me if there's opportunities to come back, especially on that frontage lot, and to do some unique things. Now, that does come with a trade-off, and the trade-off would be that existing home. That's just the reality of it, of what that would mean for that fate, but it's an avenue. The other thing I was going to mention is that this is point blank a result of something that we don't talk a lot about in this city, the effects of widening our roads. Because at one point in time, your property had plenty of setback. Your property had all the room it could have ever needed for the pathway that's being talked about. But as we widen our roads in front of the lots that front those roads, those setbacks diminish. And we end up having issues like this. This body, as well as council, for the last couple of years, has had that pathway issue along State Street in front of us numerous times for other property owners. And we've had to do and take action that aren't always fun, but in order for that pathway to be preserved, which is codified in a plan, we do have to make actions that unfortunately don't always work in the favor of the applicant. So I just wanted to add those two things to what Commissioner Gillespie said. But certainly with that new code, I would, again, think that there's probably opportunities to come back. But again, apologize for whatever transpired in the last several months. But I will be in support of the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. John's got his hand up online. Commissioner Mooney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I want to second Commissioner Danley's comments about apologies to the applicant. And that's the intent of the new code, is to make things less difficult for those that are at risk financially and are making these efforts to provide more housing stock. So once again, I second Chris's comments on that. And then also, I'm interested from the city staff's perspective about, I'll be in support of this motion, but the fire department stumbling across a parking restriction that they didn't know about before, and how many other places are we dealing with this in the city?
We'll take that up at a later time. Thanks, John. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right. Yeah. To the applicants. Yeah, I'm going to second all the comments from my fellow commissioners here. Apologies for the confusion, first and foremost. I mean, we hate to get to this position where, where we are now, right? You spent the investment and the time and the money to get a no. But I think that certainly in agreement with the comments about the code and where it stands and the reasoning and the logic of where we are right now. So, so I guess we'll go ahead and call the roll on this. And again, I guess Milt, to be clear here, that was a denial just on the PUD and the CVA, and we'll pick up the SUB next. Or were you picking them all up at one time?
Yeah, maybe I just should amend my motion and recommend denial of the SUB.
Okay, so pick them all up. So I recommend denial.
Are you
of the
okay with
SUB.
that?
I'm supportive of that
Okay.
motion.
And we've got an agreement by the seconder on that. Okay, so we've got a motion to deny PUD 2324 and CVA 23-21, and then a recommendation to deny SUB 23-26. Motions were by Commissioner Gillespie with a second by Commissioner Danley. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha. All in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Okay. Good to press on here, team?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to item number 5 on our agenda, CVA 23-24 Ethos Design and Remodel LLC. The address is at 3124 North Crane Creek Road. This is a variance to encroach the side setback on 0.34 acres in an R1B zone. And we're going to hear from Ivan Kowalczyk with staff.
Is this a new guy?
Mr. Chair, Commission, the item before you is variance CVA 2324. This is a variance for the side interior setback in an R1B zone from a standard 10 feet to 2 feet 6 inches from the property line. Property is located at 3124 North Crane Creek Road and is approximately 0.33 acres. The variance is a request to accommodate the construction of a 365 square foot accessory dwelling unit for an additional family member to reside in. The proposed ADU is within a side yard area on the property's western edge and will be attached to the current 5,100 square foot 2-story single-family residence. A variance is requested for this ADU as it will encroach considerably within the 10-foot side setbacks standard to the R1B zone. The applicant has claimed that the hardship of aging in place, as well as the difficulty of accessing the property's pool and backyard areas, hillside concerns, and a disrupting of existing mechanical utilities necessitate the need for an ADU location and the associated variance. Alternative sites for this ADU do not encroach on any setbacks identified. This alternative site could be located in the backyard of the property extending towards the rear setback. This alternative site would remain out of the floodway of Crane Creek and would meet setback requirements for the R1B zone. Granting the variance could be detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare, or injurious to property or improvements of other property owners. The planning team has identified conflicts with the existing retaining wall and the proposed ADU site. The proposed ADU does abut a retaining wall and is in submitted drawings, and either construction of or the finished ADU could potentially damage the retaining wall. City of Boise Public Works Engineering confirmed that the additional engineering and studies would be required due to the proximity of the retaining wall to the proposed ADU to ensure the structural integrity of both is maintained. If the wall is damaged by the development or placement of the ADU, a safety issue for the adjacent neighbor as well as the property owner could arise. And additionally, encroachment into the setback may disrupt the quiet enjoyment of the adjacent neighbor, and it's contradictory to the standard of the R1B zone, which requires larger setbacks between homes. And because of these findings, we recommend denial of CVA 2324 with recommendation of placing the ADU at an alternative site in the rear yard of the property that does not encroach within the established setbacks. I will stand for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ivan. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
My name is Erin Sorensen. My address is 29 199 West Moore Street, Boise, Idaho 83703. And let the record reflect my last name is Sorensesen. And we did provide a set of slides to go with this.
Okay.
My,
You're good there? Yep, get
I'm
the
good there.
slides. And you have the clicker? Yep, okay.
perfect. My associate Anna Marie is here to address any questions, and she's served as our team lead for the architectural design, playing a key role in the permitting process. I also want to thank the commission and Ivan for helping us through this process. It's a pretty interesting site with a lot of unique constraints. Really, the intention of this project, the remodel, is to provide Kip and Elaine Ladd's, their mothers, actually, both of their mothers are having health conditions right now, which are requiring them to provide care. The remodel that we are proposing provides a level of independence with potential for future adaptions that would incorporate the addition into the main part of the house. They're dedicated to creating a private space with mobility accommodations that assure autonomy for their parents in the face of these health challenges. We've been working with the Ladds and their adjacent neighbors for the last 7 months, providing to address any design considerations that we needed to fold into the project. So before a site was actually chosen, we met with the Ladds and we met with their adjacent neighbors to hear their concerns. The proposed design provides easy access with mobility for folks having mobility issues. The location is visible from the street. It enhances and facilitates good interaction with neighbors, and not having to walk around the corner of the back end of the house is one reason why we provide this spot. It's positioned for a zero-step entry, meaning that there's no stairs leading into the main living space. It's adjacent to the existing driveway, providing convenience, and it's designed with adaptability in mind. The proximity to the existing crawl space was also a really big consideration for where we have located this addition. The existing crawl space is within a few feet of this area, and we can give you further details on that. From a building standpoint, this helps us build this space out. We don't have to jackhammer up slabs through the garage or relocate HVAC and other utilities, which are located on the other side of the house. In this diagram here, I'm showing an option, kind of that grayed out area would be a space where we could open up the bathroom wall, and it would open up into the main living area, providing access to the living room and kitchen. So on the east side of the house, it actually requires quite invasive construction methods, including relocating the HVAC. I know in sorry, I'm really nervous, you guys. I don't know what it is. But
It's okay, you're doing great.
The floodplain and the floodway were something that were a pretty big hindrance to locating the addition on this site. It's a very steep slope towards the back of that property. And one unique thing that folks should know is there's an existing pool that has been in place for very many years. The house that is located on the property was built and permitted in 2015, and that pool was there before the house was built, preventing it basically locked in the location of where they could build it. And during the construction, and documented very clearly in the elevation certificate, monitoring of this side of the house was strictly adhered to. They couldn't actually build within this area because of the floodway that's over, or the floodplain. Our team will collaborate with a licensed professional engineer and a geotechnical engineer to assure that any proposed solution on the site would be technically feasible before we submit building permits. The existing stem wall is very sturdy and was built to very high standards. We're proposing a minimally invasive construction method using a thickened slab for this side, which could actually be hand dug versus using heavy equipment. We're able to actually bring this unit up and out of the current floodway to meet the current code. These are some photos that I thought were pretty telltale on the initial application for construction of their house in 2015 when they had to go through the elevation certificate. You can see the existing pool deck actually has a drop off, and it's pretty steep, and it's built up on that entire side of the house. And so if they were to build this addition on the other side where we haven't proposed, it would actually cut off their access for yard maintenance because they can't actually move equipment up and over this impediment. Further demonstrating the issues with the floodway and the floodplain. Does this have a pointer on it? Do you know?
It does.
It does.
I mean, it may be better if you can go up to that one.
To that one?
Yeah, we
You
can't see
guys
on
can't
that.
see it?
Yeah, there you go.
So up in here, you can actually see the top edge of the floodplain does go to this side of the property, and then it does slope steeply towards Crane Creek. It's harder to see on these plans because we don't have an as-built site plan, but this entire portion of the property is relatively flat, and it's built up and above the floodplain. More of an aesthetic consideration with this proposal is we're just being very symmetric. So it doesn't look weird. It matches kind of what you're seeing on the other side in scale. When meeting with the neighbors, some of the privacy concerns that we talked about were really about window location. Presently, there is some windows located above the stairs in the main living space that kind of look over and down onto the existing property. Those will be cut down in size, as well as all of the windows on this side would be obscure glass, not allowing for direct view of the property next door, but still allowing for light to come in. There's also, and I do have photos in our appendix, there's actually an existing fence and then a big concrete fire pit structure at that end. All would have to be demolished, including like the pool and deck, to allow for lawn equipment or trucks and trailers just to maintain the property. Through this process, for the last 7 months, we've had support from adjacent neighbors. I'm not going to say every neighbor is in support of it, but the vast majority are. And over 90% have expressed their like of the design and for our team working with them on it. In mitigations for this project, eyes wide open, we knew it was going to be a hard one to sell to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but this proposal does provide a housing option for this family and for other families into the future. We've collaborated with the neighbors on the design. It's not a huge monstrous addition. It is a very small footprint, low impact addition. And And while some folks think it would be easy just to place it in the back corner, that provides some other things that we think probably shouldn't be done for people in our community who have to live in accessory dwellings. They shouldn't be tucked in the back. They shouldn't be placed the furthest away from driveways and easy access and the ability for mail and things like that to be delivered. Our proposal provides the most affordable and accessible option, minimizing construction and invasive construction on the back side of the property that is adjacent to the floodplain and floodway. It also provides aesthetic cohesion, and we would, of course, use our expertise to design the unit in a way where it could be age in place and workable for the foreseeable future. I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sorensen. We'll sit tight on questions just for a minute. Okay. First, we'll check in to see if we have anyone from the Highlands Neighborhood Association with us. And I don't believe that we do, so we'll go ahead and open up this item for any questions by the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
I have a question for the applicant. Could you say your name again, please? Just so I don't have to call you applicant.
Yes, Erin Sorensen,
Ms. Sorensen.
Sorensen.
Thank you, Ms. Sorensen. First of all, good job. Great presentation. I can see you guys have really worked hard on it, and the graphics and the layout were very good. I guess the crux of the issue for me is there's a lot of room, it looks like, in given the size of the ADU you want to build, it looks like there's a lot of room towards the back of the house, around the pool area. The city has suggested on whatever it is, the opposite corner, so to speak. And I heard that essentially your primary objections to those ideas are that the ADU wouldn't have good street access and couldn't take mail delivery, and it would not be as aesthetically pleasing. Could you just review for me your arguments for?
There's actually some pretty significant construction and floodway issues over there. And if I can bring up my slides
So
again.
slide 10 is a really good one.
Slide 10 is. Before I get there, if I can show you some photos from the site here. So we have our concrete structure at the west entrance, showing that steep drop off on that side.
Yeah.
And then I have a photo here of Anna Marie actually on the steep opposite end of that.
So can you stop there, Mr. So is that the side you don't want to put the ADU on?
Correct.
Right?
That's the
Okay.
side we would like to not build the ADU
Okay.
on. And I think it would be a lot easier to see what's going on here if we had an up-to-date survey of this. But through the city's process on the previous elevation certificate, there was extensive monitoring of this edge of pavement here to make sure that no construction whatsoever went below the elevation here, because it would be within the flood area. And so that is documented pretty well.
Right.
And if we were to build on this side, it would require that we actually bring heavy equipment in here, and we would have to dig down. And then to connect our sewage, there would also be a lot of invasive construction techniques, actually making this a really expensive unit to build, more than twice the cost of building it on the opposite side, and potential elevation issues, just eyes wide open.
Can we look at page 10, please?
Yes, sorry.
So, Ms. Sorensen, one of the things we look at is just the overall lot, because the variance language encourages us to say, is there anything special or unique about this lot that justifies the variance? Because, you know, from our perspective, like, you don't have a right to build an ADU if that ADU needs a variance, right? The onus is on the applicant. So I look at this picture and I see a lot of room behind the house. You know, do they need the pool, or could they build the ADU there? So there's a lot of room and places to put an ADU on this lot when I look at it. What am I not seeing correctly?
I think when you take a step back, and it's hard to imagine that a pool, it's hard for folks without a pool to think of like, oh, their pool, it's a hardship. But when you take a step back and look at this, we're really only talking about adding 365 square feet of addition to this property. And whether it's an addition or an accessory dwelling, the only thing that changes that definition for me is a doorway that's either not there or there. For an addition of any type to be built over on this side where the planning department has identified, it's twice the cost to build that space, and it becomes infeasible. And it's already pretty expensive to build something of that size already, but it just makes it not a possibility at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Chris, please.
question to staff. I just want to make sure this is accurate. The existing main home is 5,032 square feet. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And the existing garage is another 717 square feet.
That is correct.
So we have a total structure of roughly 5,800 square feet, correct?
Correct. I believe the assessor's office has it a little bit less, but it's over
Ballpark.
5,000 square feet, yeah.
So to the applicant, why can't they figure out how to craft some sort of an accommodation within 5,800 square feet?
I think one of the bigger challenges is the existing structure. There's actually steps that go up and into that home, and the home has a lot of stairs throughout it, which would make it not an ideal living space for someone needing the mobility accommodations. Whereas the addition that we have proposed would be able to accommodate for that.
Good, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay. Jennifer, did you have some questions? Yeah, sure thing.
Mr.
No,
Chair,
I see John has his hand up online. Jennifer, you mind if I go to John while you get yourself settled? Okay. John?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Question for staff. Ms. Sorensen, the applicant, has made comments about the structural integrity of working on the east side there versus the proposed location. But in our staff report, you basically call out that the proposed location has potential to compromise structural integrity of the retaining wall. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your assessment of structural integrity issues on either side of the house?
Chairman, Commissioner, the retaining wall could be damaged by this. That was from Public Works Engineering and their assessment, and provided public comment or transmittal comment to us. They were the ones who requested the additional engineering and geotechnical engineering. I am not an engineer, so I will not venture to say exactly what those requirements that they are asking for are. But in their comments, they did say that the retaining wall could pose a risk if it was built on or near.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer, please.
So on the drawings, it's our packet page, oh golly, 209, or it's your drawing C100. There's a white box right next to the covered rear patio. What is that white box? Yeah, you can kind of see it there. It's attached to the corner of
With,
the building.
with the red, sorry, let me point this out. This one right here,
The opposite corner.
the
Yeah.
opposite
That guy,
corner.
yeah.
That's a patio.
It's a patio?
Covered patio?
Correct.
Sorry.
Okay.
And the elevation starts to have a drop off about here on that patio.
Okay. So if I'm reading that sheet right, your top edge of floodplain, your base flood elevation is 2816. And I think the way that staff has it drawn, the elevation of their proposed solution in their figure 4 would stay within like the 2817 kind of
Yeah.
topo line. And I think that if I understand the floodplain requirements, that would still meet the requirements of the floodplain. You might have to do a little bit of elevating in the backside.
Chairman, Commissioner Moore, yes, the floodplain, you can build within the floodplain. It does take certain administrative applications to be submitted with the city, but it is possible to build within the floodplain. The area that you can't build within is the floodway. And if you look at the diagram here, the top edge of the floodway is a considerable distance away. It's actually outside of the setbacks for the house and proposed ADU. And it would still remain within the floodplain in this proposed alternative site.
And then, Mr. Chair.
Please. And just before Jennifer, just for clarification for everybody, the red dash line is the setback lines, correct? Ivan?
That is correct, Chairman.
Great, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
So for a zero threshold entry or adaptability, accessibility, if you were to build on that side and understanding that you may have to elevate your finished floor, would maybe a ramp or an elevated, a sloped up sidewalk, something like that be allowed within that setback, that 10-foot setback on that side? Is that something that the city would allow?
You can build sidewalk.
Chairman, Commissioner Moore, that is allowed within the 20-foot setback, yes.
And then, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
So when I look at this diagram right here, I guess that's on our screen too, it looks like the distance from the driveway to the proposed in-law suite isn't terribly different than the distance kind of around the mechanical. Either way, you're kind of going around a corner of a building. Is it just the elevation change on that?
It's more than that. So it is a further distance away. And I think one of the bigger things is that it's actually a bigger distance away from the existing residence. It places the addition squarely adjacent to the garage. And to connect to those spaces would require traveling all the way around or through the garage, which doesn't meet the goals of the remodel. If we're able to locate it on the other side, we actually bring it up so it matches the floor elevation of the existing family room.
And then, Mr. Chair, one more.
Mhm.
So for the crawl space, if I'm looking at a 402, your exterior back elevation, it looks like there might be some crawl space on the other side. Is that just for the garage? Maybe the garage is lowered? Is that the way the drawings are reading?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm most familiar with the crawl space access that is just a few feet away from where we're proposing the addition.
Sure. Fair enough. That's all I got.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, any other questions for staff or the applicant? Make sure that Esther, okay. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go ahead and open up this item for public testimony. I did have a few folks sign up in advance, so we'll run through that list. And then we'll go to anybody else here in person that did not sign up, and then we'll check in with folks online. So from top to bottom here, we have Kip Ladd and then Elaine Ladd, and then Anne Marie Collins, Kevin Wilson, and Miss Sorensen. So I guess Kip or Elaine Ladd, you guys are up first. Ready to testify? Just a reminder, you got 3 minutes, and if you can start with your name and address, please.
Sure. Excuse me, Kip Ladd, 3124 Crane Creek Road, Boise, Idaho, 83702. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to highlight a couple aspects that we think are maybe not have been fully considered from our perspective. Like the sloping ground and the floodplain. So the city's suggestion to move the addition on the east side on the sloping ground with the floodplain, when we went to put the house in, the city at the time was very adamant that we not do anything to that side. We had to get additional landscaping architects and otherwise to sign off on the slope so that the drainage would be consistent with our house and the neighbors next door. Those are considerations that I don't believe we were allowed to build around. And from my recollection, they were very, very strict on what we could do anywhere in that area. And so, but we did really, truly try to consider that site initially until I was able to dig that information up as part of our research, as well as even having Ethos cost out, what that option would be. And then as we also discussed, having the addition on the other side, it does allow us to be out of the floodplain right out of the gate. It's flat. There's not concerns there. We're trying to mitigate any potential risks, right, with that regard. In terms of the existing concrete structures, the west side where the addition is being proposed has that concrete structure and a drop-off ledge. And it's also adjacent to the pool. And so we can't really get any, heavy equipment on that side. We have, so it is logistically challenging. And if we put it on the other side, we can't get anything back there ever. And to put it on top of the pool or put it elsewhere, again, that cost prohibitive. And then the ability to do anything else in that area becomes limited. Utility access and the shared wall, that has been discussed. That is the closest utility. That is where the crawl space is. That's where the access is. And that's where it makes it way more seamless to do on that side and not as costly. And then it also allows for that shared wall in the living area. So that way, you talked about maybe having to walk around the house. Well, but I didn't believe it's equidistant, it's less challenging to walk straight into that area. And if we were had access right through our living room, my mother-in-law would have an easy way to get into the house, but it allows her to still have her own space and have that independence. And it's at the same level like we talked about. And I feel that we have always tried to accommodate our neighbors' privacy concerns. You can kind of see that with the pictures of how our fences have been constructed. We are also trying to accommodate, making sure that they could still, using our property as well as theirs, have, be able to access that side of the house with the construction that we're considering for that side.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ladd. Appreciate it. I hate cutting people off, but
that's it.
code's code. Thank you. And then Elaine Ladd.
My name's Elaine Ladd. I live at 3124 Crane Creek Road in Boise, Idaho, 83702. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members, for just this opportunity to just speak on behalf of this project. I promise I will not be over like my husband. He is long-winded, and I warned him about that. I really wanted to speak on the reason why we want to do this project and why it's important to us as a family. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I'm the only daughter. As you can imagine, that puts me in the perfect position to be responsible for caring for my aging mother. I'm also in healthcare, and my mother does suffer from mental illness and depression and anxiety, so I'm best equipped and have been for a number of years. If you talk to our neighbors, they'll be very open to share with you that my mother has never been quiet about sharing that her dream has always been to live next to her daughter. And so we're trying to figure out a way that we can move her here that's affordable. She has lived in her own home since my father passed in 2012, and she wants to maintain ownership. Like for her, owning a piece of something is super important. So having her inside the home takes away her independence. It takes away the ability for her to say she's still a homeowner, where this ADU, she's paying for it. It becomes, to her, it is hers. Another reason why we don't have her inside the house, I know the house is huge. Trust me, I understand. It is huge. We are a family of 5. I have 3 kids in college. They come home on the weekends. They're at the University of Utah. And I have 1 in California. They come home on break. So having my mom attached and living near us gives her easy access to seeing the grandchildren when they're home for brief moments. In addition to that, my husband's mother is aging and she has dementia. And so there's 3 kids, they have 4 kids, and she rotates. And so we take his mother for about 3-4 months a year. She has to be inside the home, and there's only 1 bedroom on the first level. The rest of the rooms are up on the second level. And so having his mother inside the house is important to us as well. And so I just ask that you take these things into consideration, because we do have a strong desire to preserve her independence while trying to figure out how to move her closer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Ladd. Anne Marie Collins, did you want to speak? And then up next is Kevin Wilson.
Hello, Mr. Chair. My name is Anna Marie Collins. I'm also with the Ethos Design Remodel team. I've been working with the lads and the rest of our team on this project. And I just wanted to further speak to the human aspects, kind of following up on what Elaine was mentioning about our reasoning for choosing that side of the house. A big part of that location allows, like Aaron spoke about earlier, that access from the street. And not just for the lad's mother, but any future tenants who might be living here. It would allow them to either park on the street or in the driveway, and it would allow them to have, like Aaron mentioned, that close access in a safer way. As I think about as a young woman living, on my own, if I were to live in an ADU, it would be a lot more intimidating, getting home late from work. To have to walk around the side of the house past a fence and then to access it. Whereas if I can just access it from the front of the home. And we also think that's going to be a big part of helping the lad's mother maintain her independence. And so that's why that was so important to us, as well as the future access right off of the main living space for whoever may be home, kids, family, to be able to get in there and help her, especially through the bathroom as she loses mobility as she gets older. And that's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Kevin Wilson.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Kevin Wilson. I live at 3120 North Crane Creek, right next door with my wife Casey and our 2 teenage daughters, Ava and Ellie. Thank you for your time today. I just wanted to speak to the fact that I know a few neighbors did write in and with their support of that. We are really the only neighbors that are affected by this property. So it's fine for a house, three houses down to say, hey, this is okay. It really only affects our house. It doesn't affect any other house. We oppose this project for the following reasons. Number one is safety. Certainly a fire risk with the proximity. Our house was built in 1959. It's already within 6 or 7 feet of the line, of property line. And with this going within 30 inches of the property line, they're going to be pretty close together, which is a concern. Privacy is still an issue. Windows open. So we have 2 teenage daughters. And on that side, so I am concerned about that. Our biggest asset is, like most people, is our house. Our biggest asset is our house, and this dwelling will negatively affect the property and the value of our house. There's no clear hardships. with other areas to build. And when I looked at the floor plans that were provided of the actual house, there's a guest bedroom on the first floor, easy to access for an elderly person. I was fortunate to meet Elaine's mom when she was taking a walk around the street. She moves well. She doesn't use a walker. I don't know her health, but she certainly moves well and was fairly independent, which is great. We also, we have a lot of flower beds, and we have flower beds on that side that will certainly diminish our sunlight. I know that doesn't seem like a big issue, but it's a big important thing for us gardening wise. So for the reasons of safety, the property value, privacy, the lack of hardships, the current adequate space to build, current adequate space to house another person, and my irises, I ask you to please oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, that does it for the folks that signed up on the sheet ahead of time. Is there anybody else that'd like to testify on this item here in person tonight? I guess, Ms. Sorensen, you signed up, but I assume you were signing up just as the presenter, correct? Okay, very good. All right, and then we'll check in to see if we do have anybody online that would like to testify. If you're online and would like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and close the public testimony. And then, Ms. Sorensen, this is your opportunity for rebuttal as the applicant. So typically it's 5 minutes for rebuttal. That works for you?
So just addressing some of the things that I did hear from our closest adjacent neighbor. No fire risks have been identified by the fire marshal. And in fact, the fire marshal didn't provide any comments on the construction whatsoever. We're proposing using the same non-combustible James Hardy siding, and if required per the building code, would put in fire-rated wall assemblies to meet any conditions. It's my understanding that the nearest structure is more than 5 feet away, so those wouldn't typically be a concern for the constructability of it. Another thing that I heard, my background is in engineering, and where I'm maybe not as focused on sunlight and the things that make a house really great to live in. I do know a lot about foundations and the existing stem wall and the geotechnical engineering that would come with the application would support the building that the addition that we would put here. We would never propose to put something in that was unsafe. And I don't see a lot of risk with the technical feasibility of doing a slab on grade type of installation at this location. The cost of construction, locating it on the other side is a clear hardship. Limiting the access for maintenance equipment, trucks. I mean, there's trees and a lot of vegetation on the back side of that lot. Limiting that access is a hardship. Requiring a homeowner to demolish and take up existing structures, which are amenities on the site already, which drove them to build their beautiful home there, that does create a hardship. Also requiring that the addition be placed on the side that has no sun, which could have an icy walkway that someone could slip or fall. That's a hardship. Those are the fundamental hardships, along with the invasive construction type that would be required if we build on the other side, relocating their HVAC, trenching through their existing garage so we can tie into sewer. Those are impediments to building on the other side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is item 5 CVA 23-24.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Danley, please.
I'm going to make a motion that item number 5 CVA 23-24, a variance to encroachment side setback be denied as just be denied. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Milt. Thank you, Esther.
Give it to Esther.
I'm going to give that one to Esther. Okay. All right. Chris, please.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So the variance in our code is about in looking and making sure that there are hardships and we have reasons for the variance that obviously are defined within that code. I think that the applicant has touched on many of those and I understand the purpose of it. I don't think that anybody's trying to keep a family member from trying to live in this home. I think that's an objective that we've established in this chamber many, many times. However, that being said, the code does specifically state setbacks for a reason, side setbacks for a reason. I think that one of the neighbor cited, for example, fire protection. And what was missed is the potential, there's trees in the back of the property. Those trees can certainly catch fire. And how do we get back to those particular parts of the property? The geotechnical issue, I think, is certainly a concern. I don't think anybody necessarily, except for maybe Jennifer, is maybe Bob, I don't know, certainly work in that realm. But I think we have to take our city staff's word that there's grave concerns with this. Bigger picture for me is this is a 5,800 square foot home in a floodplain. And that's not without consequence. That means that there's going to be challenges on a lot configured touches this with underlying conditions such as a floodway. We have a covered rear patio. That's not even included in the square footage. We have another space that's directly next to it that's just around the corner from the proposed suite, right? Trade-offs. I mean, you have a pool. We have the inside of a 5,800 square foot structure. There's opportunities to create a space that is compatible. Homes are converted and put into good ADA use all the time, right? We know that. That's a problem and an issue across the country as this country ages, is that homes are having to be retrofit with the types of things that allow somebody to age in place, just as described. So for all of those reasons and the additional ones that are in the staff report, I will be supportive of my own motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. Any other discussion? Okay. John, Esther, you guys online? You're good? I don't see any hands up. Okay. Yeah, Chris, thank you for the comments. I will be supporting the motion. These are always tough, I mean, we sympathize, right? We sympathize. We all have parents or, we all are in similar, can have similar situations and challenges. But the challenge of this body, as Chris said, is understanding the code. And, I think the previous application is a good example, right? We look at buildings and structures that exist for hundreds of years and last through multiple owners. So beyond the code, we have to apply, that thought process, right? And, the lads are probably not the only folks that are ever going to live in this home, right? And, and the Wilsons are next door, and you're not always going to be the people living in that home. And there's always going to be people beyond us, right? So we have to take that view as well. So, it's like Chris said, we certainly don't want to stop anyone from living in this home. And we understand the challenges. And unfortunately, I think there are opportunities within this property and within this home to make it work. Because you're not looking at a large addition to the property, and there's space, I think, available to you to make it happen. So unless there's any other comments, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Again, we have a motion to deny CVA 23-24, motion by Commissioner Danley with a second by Commissioner Seah.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seah.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Should we take a 5-minute break? Okay. Thank you. We will be back in 5 minutes. 17. We will move along here to our next item, which is item number 8. This is PUD 23-27, Storehog Engineering at 3515 West State Street. This is a conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 39 multifamily units on 0.99 acres in a C2D zone. And we're going to hear from Sabrina Mortensen with staff first.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you is a request for a conditional use permit for a residential plan development comprised of 39 multifamily units on 0.99 acres located at 3515 West State Street in a C2D zone. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of State Street and Clover Drive. There is an existing bus stop located on the adjacent property to the north, and Veterans Memorial State Park is located to the west across Clover Drive. The applicant proposes to construct 3 4-story buildings containing a total of 39 multifamily units on the subject property. Vehicular access to the development is proposed from Clover Drive with emergency access proposed from State Street. As conditioned, the applicant will construct a detached 12-foot multi-use pathway along the site's frontage on State Street. The applicant also proposes to provide a pedestrian plaza along the site's frontage on State Street adjacent to the multi-use pathway. The building elevations oriented towards State Street and Clover Drive are activated by the leasing office, entrances to the ground floor units, and balconies of the upper level units. And subsequent design review will further ensure compliance with the citywide design standards. As detailed in your packets, the planning team finds that the proposal is in compliance with the approval criteria for a PUD and recommends approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. I believe is online.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Hello, Mr. Trimble. We can.
Hello. We have a little presentation, but I think Sabrina underscored kind of a lot of our proposal. I don't know if I can share my screen or I can just kind of talk through it, if whichever works best for you.
Mr. Chair, I could promote him to a panelist if you'd like to share, or it's your discretion.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Trimble, it's entirely up to you. We can certainly promote you to share your screen if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Okay, let's do that.
Just give me a moment.
And just as a reminder, we give 10 minutes for this presentation by the applicant typically. And then if you could please give us your address for the record, that'd be great.
Mr. Trimble, you should be good to go now.
Okay. Mr. Schaefer, you cut out for a second as that was being promoted. My name, I think you asked me to introduce myself, and if so, my name is Clifton Trimble, Senior Land Use Planner for Storehog Engineering here in Spokane, Washington, located at 510 East 3rd Avenue in Spokane, Washington.
Perfect. Thank you.
And let's see if I can share my screen. Can you see me?
Yep, we got it. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just kind of run through some of the basic tenants and location and try not to be redundant from Sabrina's presentation. And thank you, Sabrina, for introducing us. So this is a rendering from State Street, and that's a 3515 West State Street. This is looking onto the parcel, into the promenade, and kind of the hallmark of the development. As you can see, the promenade is really kind of the hallmark, as it has the pedestrian access to State Street, and really engages State to create that mixed use use. And as you can see, the site right now is an empty parking lot with the exception of a restaurant on site. It's located right next to Veterans Memorial Park. And I'll move through these rather quickly, as Sabrina's already kind of gone over some of the elements. But it's a relatively smaller development. It is 3 clustered sections of one building. So architecturally, it's considered one building because of the breezeways and the canopy. But it's relatively small. It's an acre in size, 39 total units. 32 of them will be 1-bedroom, 7 will be 2-bedroom. There'll be 44 parking spaces, of which, for one of the conditions of approval, a maximum of 40% will be compact parking spaces. There will be bicycle parking provided to further engage a work or optimize a work live environment along the State Street corridor. Of those, per one of the conditions of approval, 25% will be covered. We provide almost or over twice the amount of open space that's required for a PUD. We have 5,200 square feet of open space that is in the promenade here, which we listed or noted. And there is a play area here that's proposed, or there would be an amenity that's somewhat similar in scale. We're proposing a 5-foot sidewalk along Clover, an 8-foot landscape strip planter area, and a 12-foot pathway along State Street as noted in the conditions of approval. The surrounding zoning is all C2 general commercial, so it's compatible with the existing environment. To the south is R2 medium density residential. The future land use is really where we fit in perfectly. It really dovetails ideally with the future land use of the city. The future land use is designated as mixed use, and within the code, it says that mixed use located along corridors provides a foundation for regional, community, neighborhood activity center and development. The land use mix generally includes retail, commercial, office, restaurants, high-density residential, and live-work units. Compact single-family homes are predominantly, but variety of housing types, including duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, and apartments and condominiums would be allowed. So as our apartments would front and engage the street adjacent to the commercial use that we share frontage with, which is now, I believe, a salon, as well as the commercial uses. There's strip malls across the street and a myriad of commercial uses along State Street. This just fits perfectly with the future comprehensive plan. This is the current use of the site, looking southbound to the State Street kitchen and drinkery, which would be removed. There's just another visual of current conditions. And here's another visual of current conditions looking southwest into the site. Key number 1, key number 2, looking southbound along Clover. And then number 3, looking northwest into the site. And then 4, looking east. So currently it's, there's some blight. It's an empty parking lot, not a lot to offer or engage the community. So I think it would be a big improvement. And some of the tenets of the layout and the aesthetics and the materials would be, of course, that promenade with the emergency fire access with removable bollards, and the plaza would have fire pits, barbecues, seating areas. And again, as Sabrina mentioned, that it is adjacent to public transit. Some of the building elevations, just to get a sense of the form and bulk, would look like this. This would be looking from the south, looking from the east. Another view from State Street. And if you can see behind these, the tree renderings, it could be a play area, something similar in scale. This would be a view from Clover, looking down the street. So it's a big contrast from an empty parking lot. The floor plans propose accessing backdoor patios to promote engagement with your neighbor and interaction, the communication with the adjacent open space for Veterans Memorial Park. There's another view looking northeast from Clover, kind of standing where you'd be if you were in the park. Backing up into the park, looking eastward. And this would be if you're standing kind of right in that play area into the development. And if you're in the parking lot, so you access here internally, and then you can kind of matriculate through the units really from accessing these breezeways. There's another view, and I'll kind of end on this. And if there's any questions or comments, be happy to address them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trimble. We'll sit tight on questions just for a minute. First, we're going to check in to see if we have anyone from the West End Neighborhood Association present. I don't believe that we do, so we'll go ahead and open up for any questions at this time by the commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
I have two questions for Sabrina, or the applicant, or probably Sabrina. So first of all, so it's 43 feet tall. Just refresh us, does that meet the requirements of the C2D zone?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yes, it does. The maximum allowed height is 45 feet in that zone.
Thank you. Second question, Sabrina, is related to Clover. So it's my understanding that all of the access to this vehicular access is off Clover. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct, with the exception of the emergency access that will be from State Street.
Right. So, and my understanding is ACHD has not yet provided a report, or was that in late correspondence and I haven't seen it yet?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we haven't received comments from ACHD on this project.
Do we expect comments from ACHD?
I would anticipate that those would come either between now and the design review or with the subsequent design review
All right.
application.
So I guess I can anticipate neighborhood objections to traffic on Clover, because that whole sort of subdivision, it's kind of to the south, is there, they only have two ways to get out and onto State Street, I think, and one of the main ones is Clover. So the city's comfortable that these 39 units or so are not going to create adverse impact on traffic.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that's correct. The access is pretty direct from, this site out to State Street along Clover. They wouldn't be driving through the adjacent residential neighborhoods that are existing.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chris, please.
Just a quick question. I think about when we have applications for a daycare, that the daycares have a specific open space requirement for square footage based on the number of anticipated pupils. And when I look at this, I wonder, was there ever a discussion of a waiver request for particularly this promenade that's up front, given that it's directly across the street from Veterans Memorial Park, which is, I don't know the acreage, but I'm guessing 40, 50 acres of open space. And my point is that would get more units.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the code does allow the commission to modify the open space requirement for PUDs, if there is access to open space nearby. That wasn't proposed by the applicant or discussed. I think they are close to the maximum number of units that they could provide for this site.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead then and move on to public testimony. We had a couple folks sign up. I had Noah Beamer. Okay, great. And then Monica Galvan. Okay, great. Mr. Beamer, if you want to come on up to the podium. And just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. And if you can start with your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Noah Beamer. My address is 908 North Clover Drive, Boise, Idaho. Thank you for staff for the presentation and the slides, and I might even refer to one. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or at one point? So, okay. Definitely understand the concerns of wanting to have more homes, more housing in our city as we grow, and I'm all for that. But I am in opposition to this build for the next couple of reasons. But the main ones are really the traffic, which was already alluded to, and in the pictures, if you look at the neighborhood, if there's one of the slides you could pull up maybe that looks at the neighborhood behind it, it's a very unique neighborhood. It is really only 1 or 2 streets that you can access kind of this area where we're kind of squished between the transportation department and the park. And it is it would be impossible with the new State Street, the U-turn right there at the intersection of Veterans, for you to actually enter the neighborhood without going through Clitheroe if you're going westward on State. So there's no other way to actually turn into the neighborhood. You can't turn onto Clover Drive going westward. You would have to be going through on Clitheroe, which would then force you through the whole neighborhood that is behind
this proposition. So that's one of the biggest concerns, even as a neighbor that currently lives there. I've been there for 12 years. I have 4 kids. There's 15 kids that I know of that just live on Clover between mine and State Street. There's a lot of activity there, and there's many other kids that aren't on my street specifically that I know of. So the traffic is a very, very large issue, I would say. And I think knowing that they're going to have to go through the neighborhood, there's no other way to do that. Going right, yes, there's 2 ways to get out going right. But entering the neighborhood, you would have to enter on the Clitheroe, from my understanding, because of the new traffic pattern on State Street, which has been very helpful, but it makes that neighborhood even more tricky to get in and out of. So that being my biggest concern. The other one is just the decline in the community. It's a really unique community. It's a cool community because we are kind of all close together. And the restaurant actually served us really well. It was really neat to have that as an option in the community, and we often used it together in community. So I don't see how 39 units is going to add to our community in that regard. And so I know that's more of a humanitarian argument, but it was just a thriving little restaurant that was really good. And I understand the owner wants to have a more lucrative opportunity to build, and I understand that. But I think for just the community's sake alone, it's been great to have a restaurant there. There's also the salon that there I think would be highly affected by 39 more units. And just the parking and already the traffic that comes through that neighborhood because of the park, because of the river access, because of the mobile homes that are on the river there as well. There's just a lot of traffic that already comes through. And so I don't see how this would help. It would only hinder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Galvan?
Hola, thank you for this time to be able to speak about this build. My name is Monica Galvan, and I live in 913 North Riviera Drive here in Boise, Idaho, where I've been my home owner for 11 years. I wanted to speak in regards to this resident planning development of 39 families. I have some concerns about the traffic, just as Noah also spoke about these issues. I believe that it will create a very trafficked area, this space where we only have 2 outlets and you can only turn in one direction, out of one of them. There are no signals either, so getting out is difficult, especially during commuter times as well. The other concerns with the traffic increase is that we don't have sidewalks. We do not have sidewalks in this neighborhood. And so as more traffic has to come through our neighborhood and seeing how our children go into the park, I believe that the safety is going to be something that will decrease in our safety and our children. And I just wonder if Mr. Trimble has thought about that and have maybe possibly thought about other outlets in the neighborhood. I disagree with Mr. Trimble too in taking away that gathering space that existed there before, as you probably knew it, the Dutch Goose, and then taken over by them as the State's Eatery. I don't know, it felt and seemed like it was intentional to leave it to look like an abandoned spot to therefore be able to take over and build some homes. Those are my feelings, at least. I do not agree with this development for these concerns, and I wish maybe some clarity on the thought about possibly another outlet, and also thinking about sidewalks in if this is approved, but also just thinking about who's going to reside in these homes, and if it's going to be actual Boiseans earning Boisean wages, or if it's going to be, homes that are not going to be able to be affordable for people who work here in Boise and have the earnings in our community.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this item tonight? Okay, we'll check in. Anyone online? If you would like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Mr. Trimble, you are up for rebuttal. To wrap up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for the community for coming out and voicing your opinion. Appreciate that. And I understand what you are saying. As far as the traffic there, that's just kind of the way that the road is designed there on State. The development itself, the increase would be somewhat nominal, especially when you consider the peak hour trips of a restaurant of that size versus what's going to be in place of it. So the difference really would be somewhat nominal as far as those peak hour trips. And if you look at as well as along Clover, the sidewalks would be in place to improve pedestrian access and activity in addition to the 12-foot pathway along State. So there'll be sidewalks along Clover and the larger pathway along State. On Cicero, we're just east of the development where, you could potentially matriculate through that short trip through Cicero and then down around to Clover. It's a 28 or 30-foot road with parking on both sides of the street as well as a 2 travel lane. So it's a pretty substantial road that the city found could support that. I certainly understand that the restaurant was some of the neighbors like that. In some of our analysis, I looked online to see how many seats and what was going on there. The menu looked like it had a pretty good chicken sandwich, but the owner did decide to sell that in place of that. So that's kind of between the owners. But as far as land use and traffic, the applicant really feels that this would support the city's mixed use vision for the future, and it just fits perfectly. So I guess that's how I would answer those concerns. I mean, I certainly understand and I appreciate the comments, but the traffic might not be as big of an increase as you might think when it's in place of a restaurant that has patrons coming and going quite frequently.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trimble. All right, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. It is PUD 23-27.
All right, I'll take it. Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve PUD 23-27 for all the with all the terms and conditions in staff report as stated in the staff report.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Jennifer, you want to start with some discussion?
Sure. So on the traffic, I know that intersection is a little bit tricky. The applicants, part of the conditions of approval are to work with ACHD on how all that stuff works. So defer to ACHD on how those things work. I think from just a project standpoint, land use standpoint, it's directly next to a very large park. The amenities are placed along State Street, so the noise would be kind of mitigated right along State Street. Private stoops along the road at ground level. And on the pedestrian safety side, they're also improving pedestrian safety, at least adjacent to the project. And that's kind of the scope of the improvements that are allowed, but it's certainly an improvement on what's there right now in terms of pedestrian safety. And so for all those reasons and the reasons in the staff report, I move that we approve it.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll be brief.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So the thing about the traffic is that the applicant is correct in that commercial operations generate more traffic trips than do residential. Further, commercial operations have a consolidated amount of hours of operation and thus traffic generation to typically an hour before, hour after they're open, right? Whereas residential numbers are spread out over 24 hours. So the numbers are definitely going to be on par, if not maybe even less, because one of the biggest factors here that we haven't even really talked about is that this is our highest and best transit corridor, and with grand plans for much greater transit use. And so between those reasons, and then access to the Greenbelt, you know, the park, Garden City on just the other side of the river, of course, all of those things, the transportation issue is going to be very different here than it is in other places. The proximity to the grocery store across the street, I mean, I'm sure that the staff was quite happy to see this, to be honest. One other thing I would encourage the folks who testify this evening to pay attention to is that the ITD campus plan. So now that is moving forward and the RFQ was answered and they're going through the process of what proposal might make the most sense, I would highly encourage you and your entire neighborhood to be a part of that as much as possible for the very reasons that you cited, because that campus plan is going to have tremendous implications for your neighborhood and this whole entire part of the city, and frankly, the entire city, really. So I would encourage you to get involved and make certain of the types of things that you're concerned with are voiced, and any mitigation steps can be had, hopefully. So I would definitely hope that you get on board that and voice your concern just like you did this evening.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Our colleagues online both have their hands up. I'll go ladies first. Esther, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting the motion. I do have a couple of comments, though. I agree. It's a great location for high density. You know, and my comments are really geared towards the public comment that we just heard. And so for the neighbors who have concerns regarding increased traffic on the street west of the, I can never say the name of that street, Clitheroe. You know, if you see an increase in traffic, I encourage folks to work with ACHD. Maybe there's an opportunity to come up with some traffic calming options. And then another one of the public comments was from Ms. Galvan, who spoke to affordability. And I guess I'd just like to echo, you know, her comment, and that, you know, there's no requirement here for the applicant to provide affordable housing / workforce housing. But it would be nice, as we see larger scale developments throughout the city, that developers think about incorporating affordable housing into their plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. John?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's a great look project, and I agree with all the comments about density and the transit corridor, but I'm not in support of the motion, primarily because it's a PUD, and the proposed use, if it complies with all conditions imposed, will not adversely affect other property. And I believe if there was traffic information from ACHD, we'd find a large portion of the new residents of this great development are going to have to travel through a neighborhood, an existing neighborhood with no sidewalks. And we don't know what ACHD would work out with the developer. And I agree with that, Commissioner Seha, that we'd have to, that neighborhood's going to now struggle with traffic calming, because people are going to be racing through their neighborhood to get home to their new place on State Street because they came from downtown. So for that reason, I am not in support of the motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and call for the roll here. Again, this is PUD 23-27. We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Danley.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Ganley,
Yes.
Mooney,
No.
Seha,
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Yeah. No more Dutch goose. Okay. Our last item tonight is item number 9, CAR 23-22, JD Planning and Consulting at 1254 West Overland Road. It's a modification to an existing development agreement to allow residential and expanded commercial uses on 5.4 acres in a C2D DA zone. And then we also have a PUD at the same address for a conditional use permit for a planned mixed-use development comprised of 156 multifamily units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space. And we're going to hear from staff first, Ms. Jessie Lyle.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you see are 23-22 and PUD 23-28. This is a conditional use permit for a planned mixed-use development comprised of 156 multifamily units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on 5.4 acres in a C2D DA zone located at 12548 Overland Road, and a modification to a development agreement to allow for residential and expanded commercial uses is also included. The subject property was rezoned in 2004 with a comprehensive land use change to the current C2D DA zone and commercial land use respectively. The existing outdoor storage use was in place at the time of the rezone, and the DA was put into place to limit the uses on the site to similar uses. The applicant proposes to modify the existing DA to allow for residential uses as allowed by the zone, as well as expanded commercial uses allowed within the base zone. The PUD includes 156 multifamily units with 6,000 square feet of commercial space. As discussed in the project report, there are conditions of approval included to increase pedestrian and bike connectivity and comfort. Included is the VRT requirement for a bus stop at the southeastern corner of the property. There are protections for vegetation within the floodplain and floodway, and additional floodplain and design review required prior to the issuance of building permits. The mixed-use nature of the project will provide a transition from the commercial uses at the intersection of Cloverdale and Overland to the east, and lower density residential uses to the north, south, and west. And in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the PUD and DA modification, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Thomas, you're welcome. Thank you. If you can start with your name and address, please. You'll have 10 minutes to present.
Yes, Wade Thomas with the applicant. My address is 12,300 West New Hope Road in Star, Idaho. I think Jesse has accurately represented the parcel and the proposed project. And to be candid, we don't have anything to add beyond what's in the report, other than to state we don't have any objections to the conditions of approval. Happy to answer any questions, though.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We'll check in before we do questions. We'll check in with the Southwest Ada County Neighborhood Association, but I don't believe they're with us. So we will move to questions by the commission or either the staff or the applicant.
Where are we at?
Questions? You have any questions, Milt?
Yes.
Okay, go for it, please.
Sorry. Hi, Jesse. Can you talk to us about the amenities that are required? I didn't get a strong feeling for those in the text of the report and what amenities are being delivered.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commission members. The applicant is required to provide 2 amenities as this is a PUD over 1 acre in size. They are proposing an outdoor pool area, a large lawn open space for residents, as well as approximately 4,000 square feet of office and other amenity space that hasn't been entirely fleshed out yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer, please.
And just to clarify, are all the buildings on site four stories?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. They're all 4 stories, 45 feet in height.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Chris, please.
Some question to the applicant on, or could be staff as well. With a pathway easement to the north and a multi-use path to the south, why not just connect both of those on the east and west sides and make a full-on walking trail that goes around the perimeter of the complex.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think I can take a stab at that one. So the multi-use pathway is something that would be put into place immediately and with the development of the site. However, that easement to the north would connect into a larger pathway that is in Meridian's pathway plan. So the pathway wouldn't be constructed right away. It would be an easement held in place till the final location and all of that is decided in line.
But that doesn't prohibit them from doing something temporarily. They can still put some sort of a temporary material, even if it's asphalt, until the full-fledged version built by the city of Meridian, in this case, I guess, would be constructed, right? I mean, they can still do that. If they, I'm asking as an amenity, is to be able to have a pathway that goes around the perimeter of the
It'd be a nice
parcel.
running trail
Something, I mean,
for
it's
those who run.
good size.
I think that's
We have a
directed at
question
the
or-
applicant.
yeah.
I'd love to hear the applicant's take on that, if that's, I mean, if there's still opportunity to make that happen.
Commissioner Danley, I actually think that that's something that's definitely doable. Working within the setbacks. I don't know how it would affect our parking requirements on the east and the west. But we would definitely be open to establishing that path on the north side along the 5 Mile Creek. And then if possible, I like the idea of expanding that along the edges as well.
So, Mr. Chair, the question is, would we need to make that an additional condition of approval? I don't want to do that, but I also don't want to leave it as a possibility that's maybe a good idea when it could end up being codified and part of this application.
Are you asking the
I
chairman
think-
or Jesse?
I'm gonna ask staff on that question.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Danley, I would not be opposed to that if you wanted to add that as a condition. I'm just not sure how we would put that into verbiage.
Great, thank you.
We'll sharpen our pencils on that topic. And let's say, are you good, Chris?
Yes.
John's got his hand up. Okay, Commissioner Mooney.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A question for the applicant. I noticed 304 proposed bike spaces, but almost half that required, 177 required. Can you talk us through why so many bicycle parking spots?
It was really more of a design feature. We're really supportive of walking and biking. Does it seem like there's more than plenty? Yes, probably. But that was just kind of, we think that this particular project with its access in particular to the west, that Overland will be used pretty heavily for biking to the different amenities that are really there at the corner of Overland and Eagle. So you have restaurants, you have Topgolf now. You have a lot of things that are going to draw people, I think, from this particular site to use those different services that are at that location.
Okay, a follow-up question, Mr. Chair, for the applicant. Yeah, so following kind of Commissioner Danley's comments about paths, would you be interested in adding secure bike storage for rather than so many unsecured bike storage areas in your application?
Yes, Commissioner. One of the conditions of approval is we do have to put, I think the percentage was 25% of the required amount, which is about 43. 43 of those bicycle parking spaces do need to be covered. And so when we go to design review, we're currently looking at the site to see where we can kind of provide more of a secure facility that will be covered. And usually that cover is usually just something over the top of the bikes, but at 43, we'll probably try to do that at multiple sites, around kind of multiple locations around the site.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead and close questions. We're all good. Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We'll go ahead and open up this item for public testimony. We had Mr. Finnegan signed up in advance. Just a reminder, Mr. Finnegan, you can start with your name and address, please, and you have 3 minutes to testify. Go ahead and pull that up. Yep.
Would it be possible to have the aerial view projected?
Sure. Jesse? Aerial view of the site?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Jerry Finnegan. I live at 12459 West Castlewood Drive in Boise, Idaho. I'm here to represent several of the owners of the single-family residence that are immediately north of this property. After studying the submitted documents for this project, we object primarily to two of the items that we've found here. First being the requirement by Valley Regional Transit for relocation of the bus stop to a, quote, more functional area. I would like to see this stipulated where this more functional area would be. We were here in August when a submittal was authorized by the Planning and Zoning just to the east of this property. And at that time, there was talk about relocating the bus stop further east. Now they're talking about relocating it further west. And I would just like to know, is it going to be east, west, or both? And have that stipulated so that we know where that bus stop is going to be located. Secondly, we have a real problem with the traffic in this area. This is a recurring theme, obviously, but the applicant has acknowledged in their documents that their traffic calculations are based on ACHD's most recent figures, which were from October of 2020. Not only is that figure 3 years plus old, but it was also during the pandemic when people were being encouraged to stay home and not travel. Since that study, the commission has authorized construction of another basically 200 housing units within just the scope of what this picture shows. In addition to that, Meridian, which isn't always of a concern to Boise, but Meridian has authorized the construction of 400 units just within the scope of that overhead shot. That's a lot of additional units. Those units have access to one street, and that's Overland Road. That's the only way in, only way out. So we would like to see the traffic conditions, the decision on traffic conditions be made based on more accurate and more current figures. The figures are available for Cloverdale Road, and in that 3-year period of time, actually in a 2-year period of time, traffic has gone up 147% on Cloverdale Road. If we take that 147% and project that to the Overland Road increase in traffic, it's well above ACHD's allowable levels of traffic. So we'd like to get the cart back behind the horse and see some current figures on traffic flows in this area before any decision is made. And I would appreciate it if that could be done.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Okay. Anybody else like to testify? Okay. Check in. If you're online and would like to testify, please raise your hand. Okay. Mr. Thomas, we'll go ahead and return it back to you for a rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will yield our rebuttal time.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, though.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission then to render a decision. Again, we're talking about item number 9, which has 2 items, CAR 23-22 and the PUD 23-28. Who's up? You might be it.
Mr. Chairman, I
Commissioner Gillespie.
I would like to recommend approval of CAR 23-22 and move that we approve PUD 23-28 with all the terms and conditions in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, John.
Mr.
Milt,
Chairman.
please.
So I think the staff report is solid on all the basic setback, height, density, appropriateness in the comprehensive plan. I think the two issues, and we discussed them, is or three really. One is just the idea of adding additional requirements for basically a loop trail, which I think would be super cool. But I think it's just slightly beyond our remit to require that. I'd love to see it. And if, we had a way of instead of adding conditions, we could say, had a section called things we'd like to see. I would definitely put it in there because I love the idea. And I think it's very doable. And for this many people, they're at the right scale to do it. And it can be done on a cool temporary basis. So I love the idea. But I just don't think we have a statutory basis for absolutely requiring it because they've already met their amenity requirements. So that's just my position on that. With respect to traffic on State Street, Overland, ACHD has opined upon this. They didn't raise any serious traffic issues. It's my personal view that it's kind of a false dichotomy to say, well, if we don't build these if we build these housing units here, the traffic will be on Overland. The reality is if we don't build these traffic units here, these people are going to live 10 miles west and they're still going to come down Overland, but there's going to be a lot more traffic on Overland. The solution to traffic is to try and build stuff next to corridors as close as we can to the city. And I think the comp plan is very clear on that. So I support putting this development in this place. Finally, Mr. Finnegan raised a point with respect to the relocation of a bus stop. I confess I didn't really understand his comment, so others might have understood that. I think the commission historically and the city, other than requiring a developer to pay for a bus stop, it's sort of up to Valley Ride, ACHD, and the developer to figure out where exactly it goes. We don't normally, from this position, say, oh, it should go right here. We don't have the tools to do that. We're not the Valley Ride, where to put a bus stop planning team. They do have one. And I think the critical issue is that the developers agreed to fund a bus stop, if I'm not mistaken. So where exactly it goes is I think up to Valley Ride, ACHD, and the developer. So for those reasons, I made the motion to approve it clean based on the report.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Milt. Other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Jennifer, please.
And just to clarify, I'm in support of the motion. Just to clarify on the bus stop, there was some correspondence from Valley Regional Transit. It's like the second to last page in our packet that has a little diagram of an arrow pointing to an X on the southeast corner of the site. Yeah. So that appears to be their proposed location, is that southeast corner of this site.
Mr. Chair.
Yep. Okay. John, please.
Yeah, I'm in support of the motion as well, obviously, with the second, and agree with great staff report. And condition number 5 states that it's going to be on the south corner, so we've already conditioned that.
Okay. So we're good there. We can decide. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Chris,
Just
please.
one last point is when we have the image that shows the easement to the north and the multi-use pathway on Overland, one of the things, and I genuinely appreciate the applicant's willingness to, it sounds like, even go so far as to do this. One of the things I can foresee with that bus stop being located where it's likely going to be located, folks coming off of that pathway easement and ultimately the pathway when it's built and coming down through your property to access that bus stop. So if you don't want people going through drive aisles and the potential that could be conflicts there, then it, I think, proves even more that the need for that connection north to south on both sides would make sense. And from, just so that you know where I'm coming from, I'm not suggesting it needs to be some sort of a 10-foot concrete type of a situation. I think, you know, I'd like, personally, I'd love to see 6, 7 feet, even asphalt is fine in a context such as that, but makes a really good connection and route for families, young kids to be able to do things, be physically active and engaged in a great way. So but I do agree with Commissioner Gillespie that it may be a bit too much, a bit of bridge too far, excuse me, to require it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, agreed there. I also want to thank you, Mr. Finnegan, for hanging with us tonight and sticking with us here this evening through all the other applications. Hope we got some clarity for you, at least on the bus stop question. We know where that's at least maybe tentatively headed. And then, of course, for process here too, you'll have another opportunity to testify on this item when we get to design review as well. So the plans will continue to develop and we'll go through the design review process and the presentation here again. So that's just a little food for thought moving forward. Again, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Gillespie with a second by Commissioner Mooney. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Danley,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We are adjourned.